Hello, welcome to another week of Gilmore Sisters, a Rant Podcast. This week, we're going to be talking about some of our favorite Friday night dinners. But first, I have to give you all, Kelly and I, we both have to give you all a little more insight into why we do this show. So we were like, we need to just record the conversations we have about Gilmore Girls and make them into a podcast. That's how we started. So if you're new, that's your short and dirty version, right? So sometimes we're not even trying to talk about Gilmore Girls and it still happens. So Kelly sent me a bodysuit for a costume. We were both cosplayers. It's supposed to be like black pleather. Like think of the main body piece that Black Widow wears, okay? And she sent me one that I put on for the first time. And it has little pleather feet, like footy pajama style, with these really stiff seams that Kelly didn't realize it had.
I was horrified.
Right?
Horrified. I was like, we're talking, and Crayle's like, yeah, I really like to cut off the feet and hem them. I'm like, what do you mean the feet? I'm like, are the legs too long?
And that's what I said. No, it has little pleather feeties where there's like a really stiff seam right across my toe where it would be on your socks. And that's when she looked at me and said, so she looks and she says, well, yeah, I will definitely cut off the feet. And all we could think of was she's my Lorelai to she's the Lorelai to my Lane Kim when she says, well, I'll remove the pants. Like when Lorelai has to remove the pants from Lane's mom's wedding dress.
Then I offered to spill coffee on it to justify.
To justify cutting off the feet.
So that's your little anecdote about how we are actually Gilmore Girls in real life. And that's pretty fitting for this episode, which is all about the Friday night dinners and the random conversations and some of our favorites. So you all are going to eventually get to pick your favorite little tangents from our show. And I bet the bodysuit's going to make it. But for now, enjoy our theme and our ad reel.
La 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 la. Gilmore Sisters.
Gilmore Sisters is a Phoenix Sisters cosplay production and is hosted by the Cereal Box Network.
Pokemon love cereal. Hi, I'm Crayle from Pokeballs by Crayle. You probably recognize me from appearing on various shows on the Cereal Box Network. For the month of July 2023, I will be running a very special collection. I am teaming up with the network to do a special breakfast-themed collection. So go to CrayleVanest.com, and featured right there on my store page is the breakfast collection, because Pokemon love breakfast. Most of them love it as much as Pikachu likes that ketchup bottle. You know what I'm talking about. So again, that's CrayleVanest.com. Or you can hit the link in the description wherever you're finding this video.
One nightmare destroyed Aidan O'Donnell. Aidan Gray, aka Scorcher, was born out of those ashes. The Forces of Nature trilogy is about the destructive powers of having superpowers that you don't understand and can't control. It's about redemption, about finding love and finding yourself. You can find the first two books, Scorcher and Thin Ice, online wherever books are sold. You can also pre-order the upcoming audiobook for Scorcher at www.kellyguentner.com. That's www.KELLYGUENTNER. All right. So let's get this started off. Crayle, what's one of your favorite Friday night dinner conversations?
Well, one of the ones that comes to mind for me with how random it is the one I call Bangalore. Bangalore. um so that that Friday night dinner is as much about the conversation that isn't being had as the one that is. So like Lorelai has to tell her parents that she and Luke broke up and their wedding is off. And she gets all prepared for it. She has like a speech and she's like, but what if they're mad at me? What if they attack me? And Rory's like, I'll change the subject then. I'll talk about Bangalore. And Lorelai's like, you know a lot about Bangalore? And Rory's like, you don't? You know how it's like anytime you call for help now, you're talking to some nice kid in India, like outsourcing. It's a big hot button topic right now. And then an 8-year-old or 9-year-old or however old Charlotte is opens the door, offers to take their coats, and takes their drink orders. And it just throws the whole thing off. And to the point where finally, like, Lorelai is trying to bring it all up, and now she's trying to bring it all up in front of this kid they don't even know, and Rory just ends up yelling, Bangalore! Which normally Rory at least tries to be really smooth with a transition. She's like, Mom, don't we want to talk about this other thing? Like, Mom, the Chilton newsletter came out today, or something, anything other than just yelling, Bangalore! So...
Yeah, that was great. So, of course, a fan favorite is where have all the anvils gone? We never get an answer to that, by the way. Where have all the anvils gone?
My husband actually went off on like a tangent about that after that scene was playing one time. So Lorelai's all like, they weren't supposed to melt down, like they were supposed to withstand the heat of the hammer and the blah, blah, blah. Yeah, no, you didn't put the anvil in the heat. You took things out of the heat and moved them to the anvil. Apparently they did get melted down into other things. But that conversation starts out with like a legitimate question and then ends before Emily and Richard are like, no, we're putting the kibosh on this whole topic. Ends it by arguing that they were so ubiquitous, so common, and what's proof that they're common is the fact that Wile E. Coyote drops them on the Roadrunner.
I love that so much.
That reminds me of us trying to talk about advice for young professionals and it turning into how Lorelai and Luke are actually Shrek and Donkey.
Yes, very, very us. Also, shout out to Gilmore Girls bit posting and how they had like a month or two there where they just became Gilmore Girls anvil posting and all the memes were anvils.
And then people were making memes about how they were mad about anvil posting, which if you've ever been in like a meme group like that on Facebook, you know that just feeds the fire. So then people start meta meming the anvil hate memes. And so the one that I made was Rory giving that guy $20 to get her study tree back. And it said, I'll give you $20 if you stop making every post about anvils.
Yeah. If you're in a meme group and you don't like the meme trend or you're sick of it, just wait like a week or two and it'll change to a different meme trend. But also, like, that's how meme groups are. You all bond over the stupid meme trend. And it is stupid. It's always stupid. But that's why it's funny. And the anvil trend was hilarious.
It was so funny. And you couldn't make a post about something that wasn't about anvils. I tried to make a meme about inflation of the price of eggs, and it was Lorelai gets the check from Richard for $25,000, and she's like, $25,000? I could buy. I don't remember. She was like 200 some pairs of Jimmy Choos, and instead of pairs of Jimmy Choos, I was like, I could buy 4 dozens of eggs. with $25,000, and everyone in the comments was just like, I was really expecting this to be about how many anvils she could buy.
None, because they've all been melted down.
Yeah, exactly. They disappeared.
Shush.
That's with your brain, Kelly.
Thanks. And then one of the episodes I saw recently, my rewatch, I was just dying at the comedic timing on. So they started off by Emily asking Lorelai if she thought she's ever going to get married, or if she thought she was going to be single forever. And then finally transitioning to talking about whether or not they were going to annex their mausoleum. And Lorelai turns to Rory and is like, it's never what you think it's going to be.
Yeah, no, she's so serious, though. She's so casual. Emily is. She's like, do you think you'll be single forever? Do you think you're ever going to get married? And Lorelai's like, okay, the guilt trip is coming, but why this time? Something happened, because she's approaching it so casually, and she's like trying to make it seem like it's not a lecture. And she's like, well, I visited the family mausoleum today. And Rory and Lorelai just look at each other like, what? She's like, and I noticed that it's getting really full in there. There's room for me and Richard, and you and Rory, of course, but that's it.
And then they start talking about who they're kicking out.
Yeah, so they want to make more room in case Lorelai or Rory ever get married. And then this is with the comedic timing again. So, like, Kelly Bishop's delivery on the lines is really great, but Richard appearing takes it up a whole nother notch, where Lorelai says she wants to get rid of the cousin who made the annoying knock-knock jokes. And Rory's like, that's so horrible. And then Richard, who Rory looks up to and thinks is just the pinnacle of propriety, comes downstairs. And he's like, I vote for that one cousin. She had those terrible knock-knock jokes. Just without hesitation. Immediately didn't even have to think about it.
And Rory's just like horrified by them all.
That happens so often.
Whoever ends up in the main mausoleum, this is serious business, people.
Because Lorelai was taking all the good CDs with her, so.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, that one just got me. It was so good. So good. The show just manages to balance that drama and comedy so beautifully. And those conversations are the best. They're just the best.
They really
Do you
are.
have another one?
One of my favorites is because the callback is so perfect. Lorelai is excited that she got a dance partner for the 24-hour dance-a-thon. And so she's like, this chicken's really good. It's like super chicken. If you throw it out the window, I bet it could fly. Which is just a super Lorelai thing to say if she's in a good mood, right? And so finally Emily gets suspicious and she's like, what is it? What's going on with you? And she's like, nothing. Can't I just think the chicken is good? And then Kelly Bishop's character, I almost said Kelly because I'm talking to my Kelly right now, right? So Emily is like, no, this is just like in 8th grade when you kept making it your peas sing and dance. And it's because she got asked to a school dance. So again, it was about dancing, right? So like, you know, they go back and forth a little bit. Lorelai being like, it's mean that you got so annoyed that you sent me to my room, and her being like, you were giving all the vegetables voices. But then Lorelai gets a phone call. There's like the jokes about who's calling and like the backhanded comments about how rude it is to take a phone call during Friday night dinner. You almost kind of forget about the singing, talking vegetables. And Lorelai's dance partner had to drop out. There's a whole thing about his wife, and they make a bunch of like Elizabeth Taylor references. Like it goes way away. And then when Lorelai sits down and just starts cutting up her food, Emily daintily does that thing where her fork is what I would consider backwards, picks up a single piece of asparagus and says, "You can make my asparagus talk. Would that make you feel better?"
So hilarious. Just, oh, yes. The timing again, the comedic timing, just Kelly Bishop, perfect. Perfect timing. What were you telling me before we started recording about Kelly Bishop being super into prepping for the role?
Oh, so early in, especially when she was auditioning, she studied her lines really hard and practiced a bunch, and you would think that's normal, but she said that she spent a fair amount of time trying to make it seem like she just kind of showed up and just was that good. Like she didn't have to work for it. She didn't have to memorize that hard. She just read the script or whatever.
Oh, I woke up like this. I'm just
Right.
naturally this funny.
Because I guess at the time, among a bunch of her peers, it wasn't cool to look like you worked too hard, you rehearsed too hard for television roles. And she didn't have to do that for very long because Amy Sherman Palladino expected people to deliver the lines exactly the way she wrote them. So, but I just think that's so funny that it's like, it reminded me of middle school when some kids are like, well, it's not cool to get good grades. Like, yeah, I want good grades, but like, I don't want people to know that I had to study to get them.
Which I guess it makes sense that because television was looked down on, so it's just television. But now it's not. And also Gilmore Girls was elevated, or like people really respected as it was airing. People, especially it was airing on the WB, which again was not a respected network, but people were kind of sitting up and taking attention and going, "Oh wow, they're doing something really unique and special here." And partly because people tried hard.
Right. Well, it doesn't sound like ASP was going to accept anything other than like 110% from every actor for every line. Like, from what I understand,
Shows.
for a show creator, she was like very in the nitty gritty for most of the seasons. Like, yeah.
That makes sense. And the scripts were like apparently, I think 4 times as long as typical scripts for a show, an hour-long show, because of how fast the characters talk. So they had a lot of lines to memorize.
Yeah.
So, I don't envy those actors.
I don't either. Ugh. Talking about Kelly Bishop's perfect delivery, though. There's an episode Kelly saw recently that she had to message me about immediately, and I'll set it up, and then Kelly, you can mention the part that really stood up. So, Emily and Lorelai have been arguing about something. Lorelai has just had a relationship end, like a breakup or something like that. And she gets so frustrated with her mother that she picks up the newspaper that's on the coffee table and just opens up to whatever she can find. And Emily says, "It's very rude to read in other people's company," which, since when has that ever been a standard she held Richard to? First of all, she doesn't. Every now and then she'll tell him she wishes that she wouldn't read at the table, right? But then Lorelai shouts, "Shauna Christie shot her husband." And Emily's like, "Shauna Christie was always such a lovely girl." And she's like, "Yeah, well, apparently she came home and found him giving the nanny a lovely bonus package, if you know what I mean." And then there's the line where I'm pretty sure Kelly picked up her phone immediately.
Yes, immediately. Yeah. Emily's like horrified, and then all of a sudden, and then like there's a beat, and then she just looks at Lorelai. She's like, "Well, at least she had a husband to murder."
Like, she was so
Damn, Emily.
just a few seconds before that, she's like, this isn't funny, Lorelai. A woman is ruined. 2 people are dead. Like, all about how not funny the situation is. Takes a beat. At least she had a husband to kill. Like, if it's not supposed to be funny, why you gotta be so savage, Emily?
She is not to be deterred from her desire for Lorelai to get married, though. Not to be
No.
deterred.
Whew. Oh,
And
gosh.
that brings us to the coup d'etat of Friday night dinner conversations.
Which is Friday nights all right for fighting. But before we deep dive into that, we've got an honorable mention from How Many Crowpogs to Cape Cod, where at the end of dinner, after Emily and Richard fawn all over Logan because he's dating Rory now, where she says, you know, on National Geographic, when you watch those mating ritual dances, people are so sweaty, but you two are just powder dry. And that just always has Kelly being like, oh my gosh. I mean, me too, but.
That line is great.
So that's the honorable mention. We won't talk about like the whole like ups and downs of that Friday night conversation, because there's a lot of that episode is just at dinner. But yes. That line
is fantastic. Friday night's all right for fighting, so let's get into this one. This one was good.
It was really
funny and dramatic.
It was both, right? So I get they balanced it. Like, the presentation was funny and some of the conversations were funny, but some of the conversations were very serious. So Friday Night's All Right for Fighting is near the end of season 6. Friday night dinner hasn't been a thing for a long time because when Rory moved out, they didn't need it because she wasn't going to Yale and Lorelai wasn't speaking to any of them. And then when Rory moves out of Emily and Richards on bad terms with them, she's not going to go there and doesn't have to because Christopher's paying for Yale now. Lorelai, and you can tell she's just kicking herself for even doing this, but Lorelai actually manipulates them all together for dinner, tells each one that the other party wanted it, which is worth the price of admission right there. Just Lorelai at any of various points of the dinner, you know, in the back of her mind, she's just like, I made this happen. This is my own fault. And it just ranges. It does something that this show doesn't do a lot of, where it does those, like, I forget the cinematography term for it, but they're these like quick cuts where instead of like panning across and you watch somebody leave the room or whatever, as part of what you would consider the same scene, it's like there's just a cut and now everybody's in a different seating position, or just a cut and now everybody's, so each sub conversation gets its own cut, sort of, which, like, I think part of it is just how much they needed to cover and what the time that was left in the episode, but it really underscored like the comedy drama balance of the whole thing. And they delve into sub conversations. It starts out very normal. They start with drinks, they get up, they go to the dining room. There's passive aggressive comments about whether or not Richard is allowed to talk about Yale because he's mad about Christopher paying for it, and Rory trying to apologize and them telling her that she needs to apologize, and she's like, I am apologizing. It starts pretty normal. Somehow it swings all the way to, when you get pregnant, you get married. And Lorelai being like, we were 16. We didn't want to get married. All the way back to that chestnut, right? And then they'll all be laughing. They're talking about when Emily confronted Shira Huntsberger and was like, we're just as good as you. And you were a 2-bit gold digger off the bus from Hicksville. And they're all cackling, laughing about how Emily just wishes she had remembered to call her a cocktail waitress. And Lorelai's like, that's Mom's version of the C word. But then it gets serious again. And it's like, Rory and Emily are stomping back and forth behind the couch while Lorelai and Richard sit on the couch in like an awkward silence with another, like a post-dinner cocktail, right? And Rory's like, I'm not quitting the DAR. And Emily's like, you don't have to because it's my club and I can kick you out. And her being like, I haven't done anything to lose my stat. Like, they're having an argument about the DAR, which like is kind of the show's punching bag for like a frivolous issue normally. So they're having what the whole show has set up to be kind of like a more frivolous argument, even though it's really not. Rory put a lot of work into the DAR and Emily puts a lot in. But still, like they poke fun a lot at the DAR. It's fair to laugh at DAR stuff almost always. So that's the conversation going on, and it's funny because they're stomping back and forth, like sometimes outside of the frame, even while Lorelai and Richard are just sitting there. And finally, Richard breaks the silence. He says, "So how's Luke?" And Lorelai says, "He's got a kid." Super serious, while Rory and Emily are like stomping around, pacing, following each other. And so it just, by the end of the night, they're just all exhausted. And that's kind of how I feel after just watching it, even, especially with those, I think they might be called quick cuts. If you know what that transition style is called, please comment and tell us. Please.
They're exhausted, but I also feel like that is some of the more healthy, like one of their more healthy dinners, because they, instead of being passive aggressive, they actually dealt with their issues. Sort of dealt with them. They faced them.
At least talked about it. Yeah, and that's Lorelai's way, and Lorelai's the one who made it happen. Not only did she get everybody to dinner, but when Richard and Emily are being passive aggressive and Emily's like, I'm just going to paint a moonscape and blah blah, Lorelai's like, no, you're not painting a moonscape. Dad, you're not going back for even more ice. Like, come in here and we'll talk about this. So
yeah,
that is Lorelai's way. I feel like Rory didn't necessarily get that from Lorelai all the time. Like, she does sometimes, but other times Rory seems content to kind of float around in like a passive aggressive purgatory on an issue until she explodes.
Yeah, a lot of times Rory will, like you said, be passive aggressive, or she'll just kind of want to ignore something and pretend it's not happening, not an issue, until all of a sudden it blows up in her face.
Right, like she wanted to have a conversation with Dean about whether or not he was actually actively divorcing Lindsay or not after she slept with him, and it wasn't going the way she planned, so she ran away to Europe for 2 months,
Yeah, that was not healthy.
Yeah, so I mean, not that I don't think you would need some space in that situation. It's just that she didn't talk to him first, like.
Right.
So.
And then, like, she kissed Jess and ran away to Washington, D.C. and stayed with Dean and avoided having conversations with either of them.
That's her signature move.
It really is. Yeah. Yeah, and she did not get that from Lorelai, because when stuff happens, Lorelai's like, no, I'm going to deal with it, whether the people involved want to hear from me and talk to me about it or not, which there's good and bad.
Well, and like, not that she does it 100% of the time, because she tries to avoid confronting Max when she wants to break up with him, and it causes her to end up kissing him at school and stuff like that because she was trying to avoid the situation. But for the most part, it seems like that's a lesson that she has learned and just backslides a little bit on.
That's true.
Whereas most of the times that you see Rory finally confronting a situation, it's not because she's decided to bite the bullet and deal with it. It's because she has like boiled over from holding it in.
Yep.
Wow, I kind of wish we had saved this for its whole own episode. Maybe we'll come back to it. Lessons we learned about the characters from Friday Night's All Right for Fighting.
That's a good idea. Or just the characters' confrontation methods.
Yeah. we'll put a pin in it. We'll put a pin in it.
Yes, we will. Okay. So yeah, I think we've rambled on enough. We will definitely revisit the subject of our favorite Friday night dinners, though, because there are so many. They're
We'll
like
also
all good.
we'll also be at some point addressing our favorite moments of Richard and Emily having breakfast, because
Yes.
some of those have the same energy, but they're a little more intimate between just Richard and Emily. So what are your favorite Richard and Emily breakfast moments? What are your favorite Friday night conversations? Do you disagree with any of our opinions? Was there anything we talked about that you thought wasn't funny? I mean, you're wrong, but you can tell us. And to be clear,
Yeah.
that's me being sarcastic. That's highly subjective. You're allowed to disagree with us.
You are. We won't turn feather you. And if you'd like to support the show, here's where we beg you for money, because we do not have Gilmore money.
No, 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 no.
So just go to we are part of the Cereal Box network, and so you can support the show by supporting our networks just by going to buymeacoffee.com/cerealboxpod. Just make sure you note as you're donating that you want to support Gilmore Sisters. If you don't like the show, donate generously and tell us how we can get better. Also, even if you don't have the money to donate, make sure you like, share, subscribe, do all those wonderful things that let us know that you're out there and listening. So, thank you all for tuning in. We love you all. We hope you have a magical Gilmore week. Bye.
Bye.